Welcome. This video will be about the 11th house in astrology, made by me, Georgios Verbena, and I'll be talking about the higher meaning. At the end of this video you will learn all the hidden symbology of this house. Everything that is archetypal, everything that helps you to understand how to embody what 11th house planets are trying to communicate in your chart. To understand this energy, I like to think about it like being above the clouds. From a bird's eye viewpoint, you perceive everything below you because it is quite high in the chart. You see, it's right after the 10th house, which is the highest point. The 10th house is the mountain you see in the picture, and you are just beyond the mountain. You can see the mountain behind you, you can see all the trees, you can see all the people under you, you can see pretty much everything. And that is why this is the house of the group mind, the hive mind, the house of people, the house of friends. These are the planets in the 11th house that give us access to far away places, things that we normally don't really look inside of ourselves but outside of ourselves. That is why the 11th house is opposite to the 5th house. Because the 5th house is about creativity, self-expression, ruled by the sun. It's all about me, the ego, right? So now we are in the opposite house, which is pretty much opposite to the ego. Which is why we find very quirky, very unique individuals here who don't want to be put in a box, you know. They don't want to be perceived as just, oh, you're a regular 9 to 5 person. No, they want to do something a little bit different, more progressive, like Uranus, the ruler of the 11th house, suggests. And this house is connected to everything dealing with technology, robots, phones, social media, networking. Of course, if you ever read anything about the 11th house, you probably already know all of this. But what you don't know is that there's a specific kind of consciousness in this house, a higher consciousness, which is transpersonal in nature. And that's actually why you see robots and aliens being associated with this. But an even better example of it would be a beehive. A bunch of bees, they're all working together for a singular bee queen, you know. So the bees, they don't care about self-expression, the ego. They couldn't care less. They care about the collective, achieving something together as a hive mind. So hive mind consciousness is something that you need to really think about if you have a planet in the 11th house, because the planet is going to try to express itself through the collective, through other people. Not through you specifically, but you will shine through the community, through group mind activities, to be exact. And that is why we also find gurus in this house. You know, if you think about gurus, you think about group representatives, people who have created some kind of community gathering. A collective is basically behind the guru. Ironically speaking, it is all about the guru, but the guru will tell you, no, it's for the good of the people. So of course that is what you see. The humanitarian is kind of obvious for that house, but essentially it's about putting the self, the ego aside, and having some kind of higher purpose that somehow is supposed to progress or change the group. And to change the group is to tap into your freedom, to do something that you like to do, to bring happiness to the group. But of course, the group sometimes doesn't want to be happy. Sometimes the group wants to stay in the same old traditions, the same old ways of doing things. Sometimes the group is no different from the beehive, in which everybody does the same and nobody is really happy except the queen. Which of course gets us to various examples of other queens, like the Borg queen in Star Trek, which is a singular entity in complete control of the entire collective. And to be in control of the collective means that everybody else is a drone. Nobody really has any individuality. There is no individuality here. It is all for the greater good. And of course, the greater good is considered to be something altruistic, something very cult-like, you know. You see this cult-like behavior a lot with 11th housers, where they like to work with other people together, but the desire to work as a unit, as one mind, as a hive mind, is so strong that the rights of the individual are completely put into the background. And so we can sometimes have a very aloof or detached individual in this house who's very much like a Borg drone, you know, who's someone who's just fulfilling a function to serve a collective. He's not really doing anything else. Of course, that is why he's able to make many friends, because he can put himself, his ego, aside to change himself, to fit into whatever group he wants to fit in. And of course, this is also where the freedom comes in, to be whatever you want to be and to not be fixed in your sense of self. But the irony is that the 11th house is actually ruled, just like Leo, just like the 5th house, by a fixed sign, Aquarius. And of course, Aquarius is quite fixed. But the way it's fixed is in not being fixed, in not being like other people, being like, oh yeah, I will be whoever I need to be in any situation. I will just not be myself, really. So the individual in the 11th house often goes a little bit under, you know. They often make sacrifices, compromises. To put themselves aside is quite a difficult proposition, especially if you have the sun or the moon in the 11th house, or Mars, or some other personal planet that relies on the ego, that is very personal, that's very self-oriented. You don't really want to have a planet like that in the 11th house, because this is the house of being collective-oriented, of course. So your planet may not be very happy there. Unless, of course, you're dealing with something like Mercury, you know, to be like an android, to be like Data from Star Trek. It's also very 11th house Mercury, you know. You're just looking at the data, you're not taking anything personal, and you're just doing whatever seems to be logical, really. A little bit like a Vulcan almost. But again, it comes back to this sky perspective. You want to stay detached. And this can make you a little bit lonely, a little bit cold-hearted in the eyes of others, simply because you don't want to fit in. You just don't. It's not your function. It's not what you're supposed to be doing here. You're supposed to help people from a more progressive position in which you can look at them more objectively. And this is sometimes very cold and detached. Indeed. It simply has to be. If you want to have a higher perspective, it is what needs to be done. So, what other examples do we have of the 11th house? Well, we have Berserk in Star Trek, of course, which is another example of a hive mind. And this hive mind, again, it belongs to a queen. And this queen, she tells everyone what needs to be done. Every Zerg is just following her will. So often you may find an 11th houser, especially with a sun or the moon, any personal planet like I said, he's looking for a queen. He's looking for a guru. He's looking for a wife, a savior. Somebody who will take charge, who will tell him what needs to be done, because sometimes the 11th houser can have a very hard time deciding himself, because this is hive mind operation here. I mean, if you are a drone, you need a green, right? It's blanking out after every couple of words. Wait, what are you telling me? Well, I can put it on the audio if that will help. Let me see here. Okay, so I made the microphone a little bit louder, so hopefully that will help. Otherwise I may have to re-upload this. Okay, so talking about the 11th house and the war queen and stuff like that. We have all these examples, but we also have some more esoteric interpretations as well. Because while all of this seems very dry, you know, very cold, very robot, who wants that? Of course nobody wants that, but there's another meaning here. And that is the meaning of the Kundalini, the snake that rises in the body. Because the ruler of Uranus, I mean the 11th house, is Uranus. And Uranus does have to do with the Kundalini because it deals with shock, sudden surprises. And that is why you see the depiction of a snake, because of course at first it seems to move very slowly, but then it strikes you like a lightning bolt. This is where 11th houses get very unique downloads, certain ideas that they say, oh, I have this unique idea, let's bring it to the collective, and then of course the collective doesn't really normally accept it. So the 11th house struggles trying to bring it to other people. If you have, however, planets that are happy in the 11th house, so let's say Venus or Mercury, that will generally help you to get those unique ideas to them, because these planets operate very well here. But there's also the interpretation of the mad scientist or the doctor, which of course the scientist doesn't get much reputation, right? If you think about it, he's not a dragon slayer, he's not the hero of a story like the 5th houser, he's not an actor, he's not a stage performer, he's not really an artist. No, he's very like, for science. I am a hologram and I have a database of thousands of different worlds, having all the medical data of, you know what, all of this information you have in your mind, and you bring this unique perspective from all that knowledge that you have gained. You have come to some unique conclusions because you are always dealing with information in your mind, always dissecting, analyzing. Where can you find something that brings us forward, that brings us kind of like a little bit like a pioneer in the field, because you're so bored by those 5th housers, those who are like everybody else, who are just doing the hero of the story, blah, 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 boring. So of course you need to shine a little bit differently. And this is usually how you do it. Doesn't get the best reputation, but, well, you have the Einstein, you have Carl Jung, you have anybody who doesn't think like the rest. And if you don't think like the rest, you find yourself in a crucible in which ideas are gestating, waiting to be tapped in. Because the group is usually afraid of those ideas, because they come from dark places in the universe, places where normally people don't want to go to, because they are considered to be unnatural or simply too far out, you know, like, why are you coming with these crazy ideas again? You know how they like to say that. But this is something that you may encounter, that you are considered to be a little bit of an eccentric, a little bit of a weirdo, a little bit too strange for other people's taste. A little bit too strange, so of course you may find yourself in a group of other strangers, where you can find people who are, rest assured, are just as weird as you are. Because again, the 11th houser needs to find friends. Needs to find people to work together with. Because he can't fulfill his function alone. And that is why it is so associated with cults, really. It's also associated with gatherings, peer pressure, social media. While, of course, it is very opposite to the 5th house, which is flamboyant and hot-headed, about asserting one's own individuality. The 11th houser is about asserting the will of the group, to invent something, to bring the group forward, to come to the group and say, look what I have found. And then, to understand the bigger picture, is to avoid the shadow trap of the 11th house. There is a shadow trap with this house, like with any house. Here it deals with something similar to the 12th house. When you are dealing from a bird's eye view, from a higher perspective, then there's a certain risk attached to that. And the risk usually has to do with malignant detachment, self-denial, self-negation, all for the sake of avoiding guilt and shame, because one is unwilling to follow one's own path, always shape-shifting, always changing to appease the group, especially if you have a lot of 11th house placements. However, you can also find yourself in the opposite position, where you say, fuck the group, I am too unique, I'm too different. So then you may simply become the hermit. Like the 5th house, however, the 11th house is one who does want to lead. Not to be led. Not really. Yeah, of course. We go back to the guru. That's usually the kind of individual that we find with a successful career in the 11th house. Even if he doesn't become a guru per se, he may be a guru in some smaller ways, in your everyday position, to change the people around him. Because transforming himself is simply not enough. He needs to change other people. And to change the group as one. But at the same time to have a detached and cold rationality. Of course, like all the air element houses, it's not about being tipsy feeling, But that gives the 11th houser a unique position. Because like the doctor, even though he may have a bad side manner sometimes, he does know exactly what you need. He can tell you what needs to be done, because he doesn't really care about your feelings. And he is not offended easily by you. So you may try to cast him out if you wish. But if the 11th house has any kind of security in himself, it will be very difficult to offend him, really. Because, like the hologram in Star Trek, he doesn't even consider himself to be a person, He considers himself to be just one among many, just a servant of a higher purpose. And the servant does not cry about himself and what his needs are. No, he has no problem putting himself aside. And that is, of course, where many of the shadow expressions come in, where a lot of the self-denial is sometimes found. Because one is a little bit too detached, even for his own good. That is why, like any house, this house also needs balance. Otherwise, you may be finding yourself with a Borg queen, and you're doing what she wants instead of what you want, because you have not quite yet integrated your humanity Your humanity is really found in the fifth house, I find. The opposite. Because this is where you find the ego, the self. And that is something that the 11th houser needs to work with to integrate. To come back to a more heart-focused way of being. One that is less robotic and less too stuck in the head, too stuck in the clouds. Just like somebody who can't wait to leave the physical world behind. And of course, this is where you find awakenings, experiences that are changing and shape-shifting the mind of the 11th houser. But not to get stuck there, we also need to descend before we can ascend sometimes. Okay. So, we have the 11th house pushing forward with a detached and cold rationality, finding the unique ideas, bringing them like a little gem, like a little gold nugget to the group, being an inventor, a mad scientist, and so on. Is that all we need to know about this house? Well, if you think about social media, what we're dealing with online, 11th houses want to work as a group. You know, we're always working towards connecting with other people. And of course, that is the only way, essentially, the 11th houser can truly self-actualize. If he can take part in the group mind. And that is why it's so difficult for 11th housers. Because the group mind often is not very good. The mob is not the place you want to be in. Because it is full of drones. And everybody is basically doing the same thing. Pushing you into conformity. Should you decide to come up with an idea that could actually benefit and progress the group. Oh, don't you dare try to change the group. The group will push you back. And sometimes, again, you are pushed into the cults. And that is a trap you have to avoid. Because essentially, even if you are castrated and cascaded and ostracized and hunted down with pitchforks, still, there needs to be some kind of balance here. And that's why I'm always looking at the fifth house. Try to be a little bit more like the queen. If the group doesn't like you, try to give them a little bit of a good show, at least, right? At least like Leo, or the fifth houser, those kinds of sun-oriented individuals, they just do their own thing and they seem to shine quite bright, being loved and hated at the same time. And sometimes that can give the 11th house a unique perspective, that maybe it is good to create intense emotions in other people. Maybe having intense reactions in the group is the only way to be with them. To not try to be so hive-mindy, okay? Because the hive mind wants to make everybody the same. Wants everybody to be always on the same page. And this is where the 11th houser can become rigid, like the fixed sign of Aquarius, where he's trying a little bit too hard to make everybody happy. And you can't do that. I know that a little bit about that because I have the 11th house South Node. My South Node has always pulled me back a little bit into, yeah, but the group, what do they think? Yeah, okay. And what if a group doesn't like my ideas? Yeah, okay. Try to balance it out. Be a little more confident, you know. A little bit more selfish, if you like. Because that's something the 11th house really doesn't want to do. Doesn't want to appear as the selfish individual going his own path, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. But you're not being selfish, you are accepting being called selfish, which is very, very different from actually being selfish. But being dependent on other people, letting other people decide how you live your life. That's not very good, is it? And that can make you into a fake guru. Not a unique guru, not by any means. The 11th houser who does not allow himself to be rejected, does not allow himself to be real. That's the deal he has to be making, has to be willing to make. So I hope this video about the 11th house you liked, and if you did, please leave a like and subscribe, and thanks for watching.